Today, we're going to talk together about one of the most mysterious and intriguing projects in gaming history. Because this is not just an ordinary canceled game we're looking at. What we have here is Agent, the project Rockstar announced years ago, the same Rockstar behind massive titles like GTA and Red Dead Redemption. A game that created huge excitement and then seemed to completely vanish. And on top of that, this game has carried one huge question with it for years. Was Rockstar really trying to make its own giant James Bond-style spy game? On the official side, we're looking at an action game set in the late 1970s, built around a Cold War atmosphere, espionage, and political assassinations. But the deeper you look behind the scenes, the more mysterious and much more interesting the whole thing becomes. So before we get into the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, because we're going to keep talking about lost game projects like this, canceled titles, and the big behind-the-scenes stories of the gaming world. Alright, let's get into the details. When we think of Rockstar, quality already comes to mind. GTA, Red Dead Redemption, Max Payne 3, Bully, LA, Noir. When this studio announces a game, players do not get excited for no reason. Because Rockstar is not just a company that makes popular games, it is also a team that puts out titles that define an era. So when Agent was announced years ago, people did not look at this project like some ordinary game. Everything became especially attention-grabbing during E3 in 2009. While Sony was presenting major upcoming projects for the PlayStation 3, the Rockstar logo suddenly appeared on stage, and then the name Agent was revealed. At that moment, everyone had the same question in mind. What is Rockstar making? Because there was no long trailer, no detailed gameplay showcase, and no character reveal. But just the name alone was enough to get people on their feet. When we look at the official statements, Agent was described as an action game set in the late 1970s, using a Cold War atmosphere, shaped by espionage, counterintelligence, and political assassinations. That alone was already very powerful, because we knew Rockstar through the crime world, open-world chaos, and hard-edged characters. But now there was something completely different in front of us. We started imagining a more secretive, more political, more sophisticated Rockstar game, and that was the most interesting part of it, because it was never officially said that this game was a licensed James Bond title. But because of the announced time period, the spy theme, the 70s aesthetic, and the feeling of worldwide operations, a huge part of players naturally thought this. Rockstar might be making its own James Bond-style game. And to be honest, I don't think that idea sounds unrealistic at all. Because if a studio like Rockstar was stepping into the spy genre, it probably would not treat it like a classic stealth game, but as a giant cinematic action experience. So you would not just be a spy, you would probably travel the world, go to different countries, blend stealth with combat, maybe drive vehicles, and maybe get pulled into major political events. In short, on paper, this project looked incredible, but this is exactly where Agent's story starts to get dark. Because the announcement was huge, the expectations were massive, but what came afterward was almost complete silence. Months passed, years passed, no new trailer came, no gameplay was shown, no characters were revealed. It was as if Rockstar had announced a game and then locked the door to it and thrown the key into the ocean. After that, people naturally started creating theories. Some saw the project as completely canceled. Some thought it had gone through a much bigger transformation behind the scenes. Others argued that Rockstar had transferred its technology and some of its ideas into other games. And honestly, the information that came out over the years never really weakened that possibility. When we look at Agent's roots, the trail goes all the way back to Rockstar San Diego. This team, formerly known as Angel Studios, started playing a more central role in major projects after being acquired by Rockstar. And this studio already had an important history of taking different ideas and reshaping them into something with a new identity. In fact, even the transformation of a Capcom-connected cowboy project into Red Dead Revolver was part of that story of reinvention. So Agent does not really look like a project that appeared out of nowhere. Day, clean, and fully formed. It feels more like an idea that changed shape over the years, grew, shifted direction, and became tied to different ambitions inside Rockstar. At one point, it was even said that this project had become the studio's way of proving itself. So it may not have just been about making a new game, but also about saying, we can create something big on Rockstar's level. According to claims, the early demos prepared for the project were quite ambitious. They were reportedly trying to blend a 70s aesthetic, large action sequences, more cinematic storytelling, and espionage tension all into one package. Some older accounts mention helicopter chases, huge explosions, and a structure that moved through different cities. It is hard to know how much of that actually belonged to the final version of the game, but one thing is certain, Agent was not being planned as some ordinary action game. And that is where the real problem starts. Because big ideas do not always lead to big results, especially for a company like Rockstar, which is obsessed with quality. According to things Dan Houser later shared, Agent went through around 5 different versions. And that tells us this. there was no single clear vision. Rockstar seems to have spent a long time trying to figure out what this game was actually supposed to be. The most critical issue may have been the collision between an open world and a spy story. Because a good espionage story usually needs pace. It needs pressure. It needs a structure that constantly moves forward, keeps the player tense, and makes them wonder, what happens next? An open world, on the other hand, gives the player freedom. You wander off, explore, waste time, and do things outside the mission. One of the things Rockstar most likely struggled to solve with Agent was probably exactly that. On one side, you want to make the player feel like an elite agent preventing the end of the world, and on the other side, you are giving them total freedom to roam. Balancing those two things is not easy. It works in GTA because the crime world already fits chaos and unpredictability. It also works in Red Dead because the journey and atmosphere are part of the soul of the game. But in espionage, rhythm is everything. If the player falls into empty downtime there, all the tension can break apart. Another possibility is that Rockstar's internal priorities simply changed. Because as the years went on, a huge project like Red Dead Redemption moved to the front. Then, GTA 5 came along and became a game that changed industry history. When that happened, it became harder and harder to keep dedicating resources to a risky project like Agent that was struggling to find its identity. Instead of saying, let's save this, the company may have leaned more toward the mindset of, let's put our energy into projects that are clearer and stronger. And this is where one of the most interesting theories comes in. According to some rumors, the technology, ideas, or certain mission structures developed for Agent may have later been spread across other Rockstar projects. So even if Agent did not fully survive, it may have been broken apart and absorbed into other games before it could become a full project on its own. That has never been officially confirmed, but in giant studios like Rockstar, that kind of creative recycling would not be surprising at all. One of the things that kept the name Agent alive for years was trademark news. Every now and then, people got hopeful and thought, that must mean the game is still alive. Because the name was not being completely abandoned, certain official filings would pop up and the game would be talked about again. But every time, what came out of it was not hope, it was more uncertainty. So Agent's name stayed alive, but the game itself wandered around like a ghost. One of the final blows came around 2018. News started spreading that the trademark had been abandoned, and for many people, that was the moment it was officially over. Rockstar also never came out and gave a long cancellation statement, so this project was never loudly killed off. It was quietly forgotten. And I think that is exactly what makes Agent's story even more mysterious. Because some games get canceled, but Agent feels like it simply evaporated. So let's go back to the original question. Was Agent really Rockstar's lost James Bond game? The official answer is no. We cannot say that for sure. But when you look at its spirit, its time period, its espionage structure, and the developer stories that came out over the years, saying that Rockstar was trying to build its own giant Bond-style spy series does not feel exaggerated at all. Maybe Agent's biggest misfortune was simply being too ambitious, because if it really was trying to combine open-world freedom with the pace of cinematic espionage, Rockstar may have been attempting something a little ahead of its time. Even today, making a game like that perfectly would be incredibly hard. When you combine the technology of that era, internal expectations, and other projects growing at the same time, Agent may have slowly entered a dead end. But no matter what, Agent will continue to remain one of the most interesting lost projects in gaming history. Because this is not just some ordinary game canceled by some ordinary studio. This is Rockstar. One of the biggest game companies in the world had a spy game that it chased for years, and still could not show to the world. And honestly, that alone is enough to make Agent unforgettable. Personally, I love talking about projects like this, because sometimes the games that never come out tell us as much as the ones that do, maybe even more. Through stories like these, we understand better which ideas looked perfect on paper but fell apart in execution, and which huge ambitions got stopped by technology or clashes of vision. Agent is one of the clearest examples of that. Maybe we will never see this game. Maybe nothing under the name Agent will ever come out. But if Rockstar ever decides to return to the spy genre one day, then maybe the spirit of this lost project from years ago could return in some form. And who knows, maybe one day we really will get to play Rockstar's fully realized giant spy fantasy. But for today, what we have left is a massive expectation, years of silence, and one huge question mark carved into gaming history. By the way, what do you think about Agent? Was it really Rockstar's lost Bond-style game? Or was it a project crushed from the beginning under the weight of ideas that were just too big? Make sure to write your thoughts in the comments. If you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And if you want us to talk more about lost, canceled, and behind-the-scenes gaming projects like this, let me know that too. See you in the next video.